Hi, Chris.
Stephanie, happy Thursday. How are you? Give me some sort of news. What's going on in your life?
Oh, if only you knew. I am going down to Seattle this weekend to go prom dress shopping with my daughter.
With two boys, I've never had that part of this experience.
It's also her birthday, so it's a bit of a birthday trip too. But, we don't get the kind of breadth of variety here in Vancouver for prom dresses. So, and because my daughter got voted the most fashionable in her school last year in the yearbook, she has a reputation to uphold. So we have to find something different and unique and her style and what have you. So anyway, we may come home with nothing, but it's more just a birthday trip than anything.
Well, that's exciting. The big holiday in our household coming up is Valentine's Day, but Valentine's Day is the day our second son was born. So Sam was born on Valentine's Day, so we call it St. Sammy's Day, but we tend to celebrate Valentine's Day a little early in our house. So Jess and I had a date night last week. It was really lovely. We sat down on the couch after dinner and, started to, snuggle a little bit. And Jess said, maybe it's time we take this upstairs. And I said, well, it's a pretty big couch, but if you grab one end, I'll grab the other. We can try to get it up there.
Okay, well, I feel like my dad joke is a little bit lacking today, but that was a C+.
It's a Valentine's Day themed dad joke,
Oh, is it? Okay, well, I'll bring a better Valentine's Day theme next week, but I just got a short one for you. What do you call a fish with no eyes?
I don't know. What do you call a fish with no eyes?
Shh.
That should not be funny, but it is.
That's about the level I'm functioning at today. Okay. Right. Hey, Chris.
Yes.
What's the real reason you have not fired your employees yet? Not all of them, but the ones that you need to. Bob Chapman at Wehmiller requires managers to document what we could have done differently before any termination. The form shifts blame from employee to system, which means by the time someone's fired, the case is already airtight. Today on How to Founder, we're going to be talking about how to terminate an employee. I'm your host, Stephanie Hayes, and I am with my wonderful co-host, Chris Franks, and we have a guest today, Bill Kasko. Bill is the president of Frontline Source Group, a staffing firm that has scaled to 31 locations. He created the industry's first 5-year placement warranty, reframing hiring from transaction to long-term investment. I love this. Nice to see you, Bill. Thanks for joining us.
Wonderful. And I will not jump in with any dad jokes for Valentine's Day.
I mean, feel free. We set the bar pretty low, Bill.
No, I made the mistake 30, I shouldn't say, that's horrible. I'm going to get in trouble just for saying that. 32 years ago, getting married, basically right before Valentine's Day. And so our anniversary is on the 12th. And so, when you're young and stupid, you don't realize that having a wedding anniversary right before Valentine's, you don't get out of one or the other. I mean, you have to do both, right? And so that's my only issue is that
I will tell you 100% because there's zero chance that my spouse actually listens to the show. She has to listen to me enough. So the idea of her listening. So when my son was born on Valentine's Day, I just went, yes.
Yeah, well.
Well, my daughter's born on the 10th, so she's on Tuesday coming up. So we're close, but I had both my kids on their due dates. And my son was born like the day before his dad's birthday. And I'm born the day before my sister. The day after my sister. So we like to keep things nice and tight in our family.
Well, and Chris made the comment, listening to is what first of all, apparently after 32 years, I don't listen is what I hear all the time. And so now I just try to make sure I keep my dates straight. So anyway,
Good call.
appreciate being here. Excited to be here with you guys. Appreciate this.
So Bill, let's dive in. You have said there's a different reason for documentation and the process of getting people through the firing. So can you talk a little bit more about your own philosophy on this?
Well, and I think, and it's a really great question, and I'm not sure it can be answered in one simple meeting or discussion of minds anymore. And part of that really goes back to the methodology and the way that things have changed. I call it BC. And since the BC time, which is before COVID, to today, right? And so the world has changed, and the way that we do things has changed. And so when you talk about firing, the core part of this thing is, how did you get to the hiring? And in the documentation piece, if we go to BC, documentation had to do with BC time, where everything had to be documented. We had to have a reason for cause. We had to have all of these ducks in a row. So that tells me that so first of all, we were planning on it. So our mindset in the BC timeframe was that we were planning to get rid of someone who wasn't fitting into our organization or wasn't performing well, or this plethora of reasoning that was behind it. And so during the BC time, that's what the mindset was. Well, now we fast forward to today, and it's very important to understand the analytics of hiring and the time frame of what's taken place when you do hire an employee, and the longevity. What is their tenure? And so having this discussion is to understand we have to flip-flop back and forth, right? We have to go back to understand that in BC time, when an employer looked for a new hire, when a new company was starting up, they would look at things that were important to them that they, quote, thought were important. And one of those was always tenure. How long they've only been at that company. This is one of the ones I used to love to hear. They've only been at that company for 10 years. I am looking for somebody that's been there longer. Okay, that was a legit thing during BC. Today, it's not a legit thing. Well, Bill, why would it be that? Well, number one, in the United States, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says the average tenure of an employee at a company is between 1.9 and 2.9 years. I just want you to think about that. Let that kind of resonate. How many people we have working in this country, and that's your average. Also, we know that the government statistics are a little fuzzy, right? We know that. We know that sometimes they're good and then they come out and they change them. They only report on this number every 2 years. I always find that funny, because I'm thinking maybe because the person lost their job, or they left their job. I don't know. But they only report on this number every 2 years and give us this data. But the data is really strong, and it does make sense, because what has happened between the two, we've changed the hiring. So when a new company or an established company goes to hire new employees, the way they look at things are different. The other piece of this is that, again, in BC time, the intellectual property of hiring someone and training them and teaching them a skill or teaching them your industry and going through that, it was a process that took time. It took, your onboarding, it didn't happen in 90 days, which is, and this goes back to one of the reasons we came up with our 5-year warranty. It takes 90 days. It could take 6 months. Sometimes it can take an entire year to truly onboard and train someone at that time to understand what their position is and what's required of them. And obviously we have all different genres to look at, and all these different areas, from a receptionist to a CFO, let's say, and everyone is different in the way that they would be onboarded or trained to learn their new position. Now come to today, with technology and the way that it's advanced since then, and even in the last, we were only 30 months into AI, by the way, but the way that it's transformed today, that onboarding process and learning, it's no longer like that. That has been sped up to the point that we're talking, you've got 3 days, you've got 6 days, you've got 3 minutes. And by the way, when you're finished, it's going to change. So what the employer today is looking at is a different individual to hire. So when they go to hire today, they're looking at, hey, that person was at a competitor, a similar type of a company for 2 years. That's somebody we want to hire, because when they come in, they're going to bring information that by the time they get to us is probably going to be old, but it's the only way we're going to learn something new. So they're bringing them in almost to enhance what they're doing. And then today, when they're looking to fire or to remove, it isn't so much about, they're going to do the documentation, I guess, and everything else still, but now they're looking at it as, what did we do wrong on the hiring? Where did we miss the hiring process and the interview process to not get a good hire? And so when it comes down to, hey, we're going to fire, we get this call all the time. Hey, I just had one the other day. This person's been with us for 15 years. They're not doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, I got all types of red flags, right? Number one, if they've been there for 15 years and they're not doing a great job, why? What's the deal? And then why do I want to put someone into that role if there's an issue? And then we need to understand your process. What's your interview process? How do you do this? Is the time investment? When we get a phone call from an employer who tells us that I'm going to send over the job description, this is what I need, send me some people, we actually say no, we're not interested, thanks. Or hey, we do it, like for example, we do a discovery call. I don't care how long you've been a client, we're going to do a call. It's going to be, if you've been a long-term client, maybe it's only 30 minutes. If you're a brand new client, it could be multiple calls at an hour each. But when they tell us we don't have time, thanks for playing, we're going to move on.
See you later.
Because we know it's going to fail. So the whole issue about the firing is that if you want to resolve the firing, resolve the hiring. You've got to fix the process in the beginning in order to be successful at the end. Now, there's nothing wrong with hiring someone and having them stay 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm a horrible example because our COO she's been with me for 20 years, right out of college, right? But I actually have people that have come to work with me right out of college. Just had this happen. She was with us for 9 years, and back in June said, I'm going to leave. I want to go try a different agency. I want to go work for a different executive search firm. I want to try something different. And I went, you know what? I'm okay with that. I understand. Go, if that's what you need. You've been fantastic. You're a top producer. You're doing wonderful. We've trained you. We've created you. But I get it. I understand. That's part of this BC method and kind of mindset right now also is trying new things, doing new things. And I want you to do that. In fact, I need to be more like that because that's the only way that we learn new things and what's happening in the industry, because we don't obviously talk about it openly. But if you have someone that experiences it, then we're going to learn from it. 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call. I know you told me that door was always open. Is it really open? And I'm like, of course it's still open. And she's coming back. And I couldn't be more excited. And so what came back to us was the grass isn't greener. Like, you can preach this like you do to your kids nonstop, right? And until they experience and go through it, they don't understand. So it's not so much about necessarily, that hiring and firing. Sometimes it's also the person and what they need. And because our world has changed around us, and newsflash to all of us sitting here, we're getting older. And our way of doing things has to change also, which just adds, there's so many different layers to this piece that it's just a complex kind of question to look at. But my belief is that it starts with the hiring. The firing actually starts with hiring.
I love that. And what you've just said I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here because it sort of brings something up for me. Our audience is founders, right? They're people who are building their own business, growing their own business. They're likely not in like corporate stage yet. And, I do think that, oh, hey, John. I do think that there's a real difference in the culture and the lifespan of an employee inside of a founder-led company than what we expect from, big corporate. I've worked in startups and small business my entire life. And so for me, hearing a two-year lifespan on an employee is just like, no big deal, right? But I did a very brief stint inside of a government organization, and the average lifespan of an employee there was like 20 years, right? There was tenure, but there were constant performance issues, and it was just like a dead weight. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, you see a lot of hiring and firing, you see a lot of transition of employees inside of these businesses. Is there almost some value to being able to have that kind of churn? I know that it's costly, right? And that's the sort of like the traditional approach is like get an employee and hang on to them forever. But I'm not sure that that's always strategic.
No, and that's really a great point, because and I'm going to focus on the cost first. That's always been something where people say, look, every bad hire costs us. You hear these crazy numbers, right? It cost me 50,000, cost me 100,000 or 200,000. That is no different than saying we have 13% unemployment, the world is ending. Well, wait a minute, 87% are working. We're focusing on a negative. And so I use that analogy because the cost of firing is actually, you can put it to a test to say, but there's another side of that firing, getting them out of there, that we're actually going to be doing better because we got rid of that person. So I had an example, and especially the founders when they start companies, you take chances on people. And one of the things that you learn is that how wide is your bandwidth to be able to take a chance? Every hire is so important and crucial. I had a top producer that was with us for years, doing millions of dollars in revenue every year, but the consistency of what I called showing up late and leaving early, or calling in sick, or in fact, 1 month had 4 flat tires, which I don't think that's even possible. It creates horrible environment for the culture. So terminating the person actually was a benefit. Our revenue went up, if you can believe this, because the team was more motivated because of the distraction being gone. So it was hard for me to swallow, to know, hey, I'm going to take a step back. But at the end of the day, there was actually a positive that came from it. And so when you look at these things, it's funny because we always talk about negatives. We always talk about the hiring and the negative effect of things. And instead we should look at it as the positive effect when it comes to that. And there's a different view. And I understand in the startups, but a Google, look, if you make it a Google for like 90 days, just the fact you can put it on your resume is huge, right? So that's a whole different ball game. But when you're a brand new company, you're an entrepreneur, you're starting up your company, those first hires are vital. The first employee I hired when I started the company 22 years ago, I just recently, in the last, I guess it's almost been 2 years, I let her go. She started in an entry-level position, worked her way all the way to our vice president of HR. True story. Was there with me all the way through the growth and the whole way along. But she had been with the company and wasn't growing, it wasn't expanding, and it wasn't right. I felt like it wasn't right, and there wasn't value. That there was value because of what she had been in her focus in the company and what she did, and she was just reliable and dedicated. But our growth in the next phase of it, there wasn't a place for that person. And actually, I believe having her leave was the best thing ever for her to actually grow professionally in the next step.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways to look at that from the hiring and firing, when it makes sense and when it doesn't.
Yeah. Chris, I'm curious how this is landing with you, because I know that you've been in a position several times in, founder-led companies and small sort of startups. What's your take on longevity? And are we hanging on to employees longer than we should? Do we benefit from that churn as founders?
I think what we're talking about is a really interesting piece to lead into the concept of how we actually do the firing and when we fire, et cetera. But I think what Bill is saying is that the social contract has changed. There was this idea when I came into the workforce that you needed to be loyal to the company, and the company was going to take care of you, and they were not going to fire you for unforeseen things, and you were supposed to stay and be loyal. And if you left, there was a feeling that you, like after a year or something, Bill, like you would break that social contract.
Right.
Today, I believe that there is a different social contract. I teach my undergrad students that you're either learning or earning. Once you reach a plateau, you either ask to go into a different position, and if they don't put you in a different position, then you leave, because it's up to you to manage your own career. And I think that from a startup perspective, we actually have embraced that. Famously, there's a ton of stuff out there, but there's the Netflix culture deck back in the day where it really set down this groundwork to say, you work hard in this position, We will build you up, we'll build your skills, but when that time comes on, it's time for you to go, and I'm going to help you do that. It's not that I expect you to be here forever. I expect you to come and grow and fill this role, and either the role is going to change and you're not going to be right for it, or you're going to change and not be right for the role. Either way, this thing will come to the end. And seeing the comments from John on Facebook, I think that's exactly what you're saying, John, is that we have a different dynamic here. But to transition, Bill, with that new dynamic, the hiring dynamic, the firing dynamic is very real too. How should I, as a founder, when is a reasonable time for me to start having these conversations that either A, the position has evolved away from you, or you've evolved away from the position?
And that's really that's case by case. Obviously, it has to do with size. It has to do with your company. It has to do with your growth plans and the individual and everything else, right? And so there's so many different parts to that it's really difficult to answer. I think that as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a startup, size has a lot to do with it. 10 employees or less.
Wait, size matters?
Oh, God. You set her up, Bill.
It's way too early, but you are in Canada.
Yeah.
So
we're very polite.
Different HR laws up there.
It's that conversion rate. That conversion rate doesn't add up the same. I think that how vital is the person to the organization? When you're starting a company, you're a founder. The one thing you don't want is change. By the way, you want consistency, because you're taking on a million different hats at the same time. Your everything as you're building a company and starting something up. You're on fire nonstop. So the one thing, many things you don't want the drama. You don't need the change. You want that consistency. You need that safe zone that that person's fine. I can move on to this issue. And I got to move on to this issue. We call it the 3 pillars, where we have the 3 different sections within an organization. And when there's a failure, it's usually in one of those, and you attack it to quickly fix that issue. And when it comes to people, the hardest part is that it's not like buying a widget or a car or a house. I mean, when it breaks, it breaks. You don't know how they're going to show up the next day. And so handling people and dealing with people as a business founder, owner, running a business, trying to grow it, you're all over the place. And so that growth and change, those conversations when you're starting a company rarely happen where someone sits down to you and says, hey, Chris, here's the deal. You're probably going to be in this position for 2 years. And then at the end of the 2 years, it's probably going to be time for you to go. That's not how that goes. That person's having a conversation saying, hey, Chris, this is what we're going to do. We're going to bring you in here in this. Here's what we need. We're going to keep teaching you. We're going to learn these things. We're going to keep moving you. That growth pattern is what an entrepreneur or founder uses, because they don't want to have to go back to find someone just like Chris again. And so they're always looking at how to keep moving it. That conversation about getting to a point and leaving, that's only when the organization is large enough that the bandwidth is there, that person's not worried about it, and they know they can find someone else that can come in to do that job. When you're starting up and you hire your first 1, 2, and get to 5 employees, it is still a fire show nonstop. I mean, you are running in circles all day long, putting out fires, handling clients, doing your bit, whatever your business may be. And so that idea of having that conversation, it's not coming up. I mean, these individuals that hire people, even a company who's been around and made it the 3 years, they're still looking at bringing a person in, get them going, and then moving them up to the next level so they can bring the next person in. They're not having a discussion about saying, I want that person to leave. Yeah. When they don't perform and they have to fire, they recognize it, but it has to be something that triggers them to the point that they're like, I can't do it. I've got to do this. This is hurting me, because now it's distracting from what their plan is over here. Now I've got to fix this. Now I've got to find somebody just like it. They've got to be a cultural fit. We're growing. They probably have some skeletons. They probably have, the ups and downs of things. That's the difficult time for them, is to recognize that the hiring and firing piece of it is important, and that if they feel there's a problem and they can't fix it, get rid of it, cut it out. We call it, cutting out the cancer, because it'll only spread. And as you're growing the organization, if you have someone that isn't like I did, if you have someone that isn't, they're not performing right, they're not fitting in right, they're not setting the right tone of what you want to have set, and you need to rely on them, they're going to cost you at the end of the day. You're better off cutting it out than you are trying to appease and keep moving forward. You're just kicking the can down the road. So the hard part is coming to the realization.
Yeah, and I think that's tough, especially for founders. I do want to like turn our conversation to, you know, the topic of how do we effectively, when we know that we need to terminate, how do we effectively do that? But I just want to acknowledge, so John's comment here about, you know, there's a real shift in you know, in the work environment where people can now increase their salaries making lateral moves, and there's a lot of choice. So his comment is we need to focus on being an employer of choice and being the right environment for employees to come. And then I think that we have to navigate, like John and I worked together many decades ago.
Oh, John, send me a message. Give me some dirt on Stephanie.
The first startup that I worked for out of university, even before the .com, like it was kind of right on the edge, teetering there. And so I know that he knows how it feels to be working inside of a founder-led organization. And there is, you know, some dialogue here around being an employer of choice and ensuring that we are able to create the conditions of retention. But I don't necessarily think what we want is retention. I think what we want is fit, right? I think we want the right team at the right growth stage. And then it's okay for us to sort of know that we're going to have some coming and going, right? So Bill, I want to just shift our conversation to when we have to terminate an employee, when we know that that's coming, what's the right way to do? What do we do wrong as founders?
Well, I want to focus on it, but I want to go back to one thing just on your comment. That employer of choice, I think, is a whole discussion topic because I don't believe there is such a thing anymore. And I think that's a BC thing. And it's important to understand that the lateral moves are what companies are doing, and that making a change and getting that big pay raise kind of went away when workers understood they were in control during the Great Resignation. Employers today remember that. I'm just going to point that out. Those raises and increases in pay are not happening like they were 2-3 years ago during the Great Resignation. And so that employer choice thing is a big topic. But going back to your question here, I really believe it goes back to the hiring. I really believe this really goes back to how you hired them and then how you're going to fire them. And there's a lot of different ways and angles to look at this. It's important to understand how was it set up for them in this position? What was that process when you hired them? What expectations did you give to them? It goes back, I think Chris said that, the social contract. What did you discuss? Did you just say, here's the job description, this is what you're going to be doing, and there weren't expectations? I mean, did you have expectations? Is this an individual who is showing up late and leaving early? Is this an individual who is disrespectful, not to you as a founder, because that's going to happen, but to your team? Is it a member that they're not a part of something? I mean, what are the triggers that have pissed you off to the point to fire them? That's the first thing to understand. And if you're that pissed off, and sorry for my French, and you go
We're
home
very
at
fragile
here. Canadian. You go home at night and you're mad about it, then why are you losing sleep? Get rid of the person. Get rid of them. Don't look back. Don't have any regrets. There's obviously an underlining point. The key is to learn from it. Where did you miss this along the way? What happened? What triggered this to happen? And then if you really want to save them, then you should have recognized it, or you should have that honest conversation. That's another thing that just blows my mind when I hear this. Did you have conversations? No. Did you address? No. I mean, I don't understand. When you're a small company, when you're a founder, when you're a startup, you're not an organization going through 9 layers of management to have a conversation and bring in HR and legal and all this other junk. You're probably sitting in a small section or a cubicle, or you're remote and you're on Zoom calls or whatever it may be, and you're having calls and you're talking to the person all the time, it's easy. You're just like, Stephanie, something's not right. I just got this weird feeling. Can we just talk? I mean, you've built something when you're a founder with each one of these new employees that you hire. There's a connection there of some sort. Do you know them well enough? Do you ask them just some basic questions? Have you spent the time to understand what they're dealing with? Do you know that they've got a daughter who's going prom shopping and how stressful that is? Good Lord, I remember. I mean, it's it's drama, and there are things that affect people that you don't know, and until you ask, there's not the empathy that's built into there, and have a little grace for people, because firing is expensive. And by the way, hiring, it's not so easy. There isn't a pool. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys have looked at, the Great Salt Lake. That thing's shriveling up too. I mean, we don't have a pool of qualified individuals out there ready to jump ship and make changes unless you're going to give them a big bounce in money. And it's not all about the money. So going to find that talent and replenish what you're pulling out isn't an easy task. You just can't throw a net out and find, oh, I just need this. No, it's so vital. So that quick firing thing, it's really got to trigger something that tells you got, I mean, if they're obviously lying to you, I have a policy, you lie to me, you're dead to me. That's it. I mean, I don't care. I could care less. But it goes back to the hiring. What questions did you ask along the way? And I'm going to share something with you guys. It's kind of proprietary, but I'll share it because it's not really, but it won't get you in trouble. I ask one question when I go into an interview to internal hires. One question. That's the most important. I take the resume, I look at it, flip it over, and I say, tell me about growing up in your parents. It's not an EEOC violation. It's nothing. I want to know about them. I want to know about how they grew up. I want to know and hear the story. Now, sometimes I've had people be offended and I'm not going to answer that. That's fine. And I've had others that and at the end of it, they're crying. I'm crying. But you understand the person deeper. And it goes back to the hiring. I firmly believe we don't spend the time and invest in the beginning. And I'm not talking about interviewing someone 9 times, by the way. That doesn't solve anything. I'm talking about asking the right questions. Skill set, how to do accounting, how to build a palette. That's a skill. I can teach you that. I can't teach you a soft part. I can't teach you about you. And if it doesn't fit into my mold, it doesn't resonate. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, single mom. We all had to figure out a way to go to college. We had to figure out a way to survive. I hear somebody come in and talk about, hey, I had to pay my way through college. I had to do this, blah, blah, blah. And you just went up on my radar. Doesn't mean the kid whose parents paid for college and they never worked a day goes down. I want to hear the story of why was it like that? Well, it was like that because my mom and dad had to work the entire time and they didn't want us to have to do that. We had a very strict rule and this is what we did. And I did internships or I did blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to that if you hire right and ask the right questions in the beginning, I am telling you at the end, you don't run into these problems. And if you do, it's because along the way, you weren't asking questions enough. You weren't having that relationship. You weren't motivating them in the right manner. You didn't have the plan. Communication is key also. I can't tell you how many times we hear that. Well, and again, it goes back, did you talk to them about? No, I haven't talked to them about it. Geez, that's a problem, right? They didn't spend the time on the front end.
Chris, I'm curious to hear what kind of your experience with this. And I know you've been on the front lines of having to pull the trigger on fire. What was, if you'd known this, way back when, what might you have done differently, or what was the hard part of that process?
I'll tell you what I did wrong first. I'll tell you the way that I think about it today. Wrong is what Bill said, is that not having conversations along the way, not explaining to the employee that I think that the job has changed or that the company has changed, that the need has changed, whatever that is. And then 2 things. Number 1 is that you surprise them with the decision, unless, to your point, Bill, it's egregious, right? There's something wrong. And then number 2 is you have put them in a place of fear. And that fear comes up because it's like, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this, et cetera. And so I think that the how you do that is you try to have a conversation to say, oh, time out. We'll figure out a transition plan for you. I'm not going to throw you out on the street. I'm not going to immediately stop a paycheck. I need to go hire somebody else. I need to take this very, very scarce resource of money away. But I'm not like, this is not going to be the get the hell out, unless again there's something truly, truly egregious there. But I think that the things that I'm taking away from conversation with Bill is this constant framing of what the job to be done is at any given time. And so you're saying like, hey, here's the job, here's where you are. Here's the job, here's where you are. And that only comes from conversations about where are you? Bill, what's going on? Tell me where you are. What are you learning? What are you working on? What else do you want to learn in the business? Is there anything I can do to help support you along the way? Are you growing away from this? Because that's okay. Let's have that honest conversation. And then the thing we haven't touched on, Stephanie, but I wrote down, is that core values, core values, core values. And it seems simple, but you hire and fire based on what you believe as a company and the culture you're trying to build. And so if you have not defined your core values, if you have not talked about them, and you don't continue to reiterate those core values, it's way harder to have that conversation. And then, the last thing is the brilliant asshole. This is so much of a world that we grew up in, Stephanie, where there was the coder who done 5 times more code than anybody else, but had bad personal hygiene and was just a jerk to everybody else around him. It is almost a meme at this point in our world, Stephanie. You fire that person immediately. You have to. Yeah. There is no stopping. Like, you just have to get rid of it, because like what Bill is saying, it's a cancer. You got to cut it out.
Okay. So when we're there,
can I add one other point in here real quick?
Sure.
That when you start having those conversations also with that individual about if you don't do it in the right way because you haven't been leading up to it, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, it's not fitting well, and it's more of a negative kind of conversation, that automatically puts them on a defensive that they're going, and that's what goes back to Chris's point, they're going to lose their job. So guess what? Now all of a sudden they're like, geez, maybe I should start looking. And founders, employers, they need to realize that individuals receive 3 to 5 in-mails and LinkedIn almost every day from a recruiter or somebody out there pitching a job, or they see it in front of them, or they didn't have their eyes open to look at that, and now all of a sudden you've alerted them, and now they're opening their eyes. They're not going to tell you that they're looking, but now they are. Now they're paying a little bit more attention. And so then there becomes this race to see, are they going to find something before, I get fired? And then the employer's like, am I going to find somebody before they quit on me? And so there's an interesting piece here that, again, if you're not laying it up the right way, you kind of have poked the bear and woke them up to an idea, and now all of a sudden they're thinking about leaving, and they didn't have that thought before. And that's very, very important to understand, because, again, you lose a vital resource within your organization, and it sets you back. And what does that set you back? Because you just didn't do it the right way in the beginning.
Is there a different way to terminate an employee when you're tiny versus when you're a big corp?
Yeah. I mean, if you're a huge corporation, you've got all types of legal compliance and rules, and it's horrible, right? Because you've got to jump through, and those conversations sometimes aren't honest and upfront, and they don't come from the heart. You hired this person from the heart when you started your company, or you were building your company. You need to fire the same way, unless you caught them stealing from you or something, whatever it may be, that it's something that's you could care less, that get them out of here, I'm going to get you arrested. I mean, when it comes to it's not working out, respect is the number one aspect that you have to have. Also, you're a startup company or a founder or a small company. They're going to go to social media and blast the bejesus out of you, and you have no recourse. Now, they may have been a horrible, and I can't tell you how many times that's happened. They're horrible, they have to go. Yet when they go, if you haven't been handling it the right way, and this is where you learn from it, now they go to Glassdoor and social media and they blast that it's your fault. And what are you going to do? Respond back and go, yeah, I'm sorry, I had to fire you. You had a quota of $100,000 a month, and you did 1,000. You sucked as a salesperson, but it's my fault. I'm sorry, you're right. There's no recourse, and you don't need that either. And so having that empathy to make sure, again, you've been doing it right along the way, you have an opportunity to do that. You have the ability to have direct conversations with an individual. So I believe, yes, there's absolutely a massive difference because they're not a number. That person, when you're less than 10 employees, is not a number. That they should be called a partner. I mean, they are a vital part of your organization to grow, and it should be treated differently.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome conversation. We're running out of time. I am going to dive us into the speed round. Take a deep breath, prepare yourself, do a little breath work. Yeah. Okay, you ready, Bill?
Yeah, great music. Yeah.
Very exciting. All right, you have a gut feeling, but no documentation. Fire now or wait?
Wait.
Okay. Severance package, generous insurance against lawsuits or invitation to negotiate?
Never even do a severance.
Okay. Walking someone out immediately, is that a security measure or unnecessary humiliation?
Oh, it's security.
What percentage of terminations should surprise the employee?
0.
The exit interview is for the company benefit or legal theater?
Company.
Okay, awesome. All right, deep dive resources. Got a couple to throw out there. Powerful by Patty McCord and Crucial Accountability by Carrie Patterson. Awesome conversation today, Bill. Obviously, you are, dyed in the wool in this area, and people can reach out to you, I'm assuming, and get some more great details. I know John was here in our comments and was looking for some more information. So where can people find you?
Well, our company website, so difficult, it's just our company name. So frontlinesourcegroup.com right there, showing up right there is a great place to start. LinkedIn, our company page on LinkedIn, look us up there, follow us on LinkedIn. We post a lot. I mean, 2 to 3 times a day, sometimes articles, 2 or 3 almost every day. Lots of information, opportunity to network with the recruiters, and just a different way to do business the way that we push out. Those are the 2 best by far. And again, if you're an individual looking for work and you're not on LinkedIn, and even if you're not looking for work, you need to be on LinkedIn, guys. That is the key location to just gather information, to network with your peers, but to also just understand what's going on in the workplace, and then to keep learning. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool.
Yeah, amazing. I agree. All right. Great conversation. Thank you so much for listening. And Chris, do you want to take us home?
Hey, we appreciate you founders out there. Thank you for the work that you're doing. You are helping all of us. You're creating economic prosperity for each and every one of us. We're just incredibly humbled to be here along the way. If you liked us, please like and subscribe, follow us, maybe leave a review. I don't know. Maybe
only if it's good.
Maybe talk about our dad jokes are kind of amazing. Or not, whatever. The nice thing about dad joke is if they're bad, they're good. If they're good, so anyway, we appreciate you, and keep working hard. We'll see you next week.